wage their battle to destroy the evil forces of the Decepticons, the Transformers. The Transformers.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting edition of Transformers Reviews. Well, today, guys, we're going to be taking a look at a Unite Warrior set. Basically because, first of all, Power of the Primes is basically Combiner Wars 2.0, and I originally sold the Hasbro version of Menasor, and I so regretted it that I thought, you know what? Let's go ahead and let's upgrade since we're going to rebuy these guys. So today, guys, we're going to be taking a look at the Stunticons. And I gotta say, I'm kind of digging, because I've done a little bit of research on this and I've seen some of the positive aspects. So without further ado, and so we can see Breakdown, Dragstrip, Motormaster, Dead End, and Wild Rider. But other than looking at these guys and their package, let's go ahead and get them out and we'll take a look at them. Okay, guys, so here we have the Stunticons out of their packaging. But I do want to go ahead and mention this entire set, and I've mentioned it in other videos, that basically Takara, when they make these new releases of these figures and stuff, and I know this has been out for a couple years now, but basically when Takara does a set like this, they homage the original cartoons color schemes, whereas Hasbro actually homages the original toys color schemes. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we'll start right on the right hand side with Dead End here. So starting off here, Dead End, I just wanted to show you everything that he comes with. He has his little exhaust pipe, which becomes his baton weapon later, and his combiner tech, which, I mean, it does give it more of a Mad Max feel like the rest of these. But if we go ahead and take that off, one of the things that people might notice is that Dead End is missing his gold stripe. Now, you know what? I mean, I kind of was upset about it, but I mean, even just having a solid red paint job for the car, aside from the other small aesthetic details, I'm actually okay with it. I love the fact that, like on the rest of these guys, the rims have been painted. I still love the overall design. With Combiner Wars and all the subsequent lines afterwards, Titans Return, Power of the Primes, they took a little bit of liberties with the original designs. Now, the reason I brought up his gold stripe is actually that the reason it was kind of a weird trade-off, because even though the stripe was gone, they did go ahead and add the back paint, and if I'm not mistaken, they went ahead and actually painted this back window, whereas on the American releases, I know it didn't have the taillights, but I'm not quite sure about the back window. Now, the other thing with the stripe being on is they centered the Decepticon emblem. Now on the other one, when the stripe was here, it was kind of at a cockeyed angle, which I never like that. So, it's a little bit of a fair trade-off, but I was looking on Toy Hacks, and they actually have a stripe kit for this version, or, well, actually, either version of Dead End, you can apply the stripe. And I thought, you know what, that'll be kind of cool, because it'll cover up this, and it'll still have the emblem straight, but I'll actually have the gold stripe being able to go down his vehicle mode. So, and I think I'm going to do that for the rest of these, but, all right, now I just wanted to show you what they looked like before that was applied. So, we will go ahead and move on to Breakdown. Now, Breakdown's weapon is interesting because this is not his original weapon that the American version came with. This is actually just a copy of the one that comes with Dragstrip. Now, I'm guessing the reason they did that was for symmetry for Menasor later. And I mean, while I do miss the other one being able to plug in more like this to kind of cut down on the, because this one, like you saw, it can only plug in like that. It doesn't have the clips to plug in down here, which to me made it feel more streamlined with the other weapon. But, I'm not going to display him with this. The only reason I have him plugged in like this is for the review. So, and then again, I haven't seen a lot of people put this on here like this. But I'm guessing aside from the top spot where it can plug in, that's why those slots are there, so you can actually, it's cool. It's not as bad as some, plug-in weapons I've seen, so I'm not too upset about that. Another thing that's also interesting is he's the closest to the American version. Now, he's still bone white with the other colors. The only difference being is they actually added the Decepticon emblems on the doors. That's the only change I can note, aside from, again, the rims and the taillights being painted. So, I mean, I think, you know what, I'm going to say this. He is my second favorite out of all of the Stunticons. No joke. And I mean, I love his vehicle mode, especially, like on, and you see it on Wild Rider too. Well, I guess for all the limb modes, the front wheels are never as big as the back ones. You look on Breakdown here, same thing. So it's kind of a fun, cool little thing. Now, if we move on to the head guy himself, Motormaster. Motormaster himself is probably the biggest departure. Now, for a lot of people, you can actually store the weapons back here on like any of these 3 pegs. But I love he is my favorite out of this whole set. I'm not gonna lie. The reason being is when they redid him for the Unite Warriors line, his color scheme, like I mentioned earlier, it homages his overall tractor trailer mode, because in the show he was the grays and purples and blacks, and so that's why I love this, is because he is such a departure from the American release, and I love it because for this character, it's perfect. I mean, it matches. I'm gonna start drooling here, but I mean, like I said, he is my favorite. I just love the way his truck mode looks. And again, ironically enough, it's with all the Stunticons. Front wheels, not as big as the back ones. I don't know why I just noticed that all of a sudden, but hey, I'm sharing it with you guys. Now, one thing about his deal, and it was shared with the American version, is it does take a little bit, sometimes these little side panels on the side, it does take transforming it just right, and it does take a little bit of working with it for these to finally stay in. But, for the first few times, these panels will continue to unpop in certain situations. And so there's a lot of factors to go into making it work right aside from that. And again, I haven't really transformed this version of him that much yet. Over time, it should work itself out like it did on the American release. That's the only slight complaint I have for vehicle mode is these 2 panels right here. See, it's kind of staying in and now. But, overall, just amazing. Now, I've had kind of a love-hate relationship with drag strip. Part of it comes, I never minded this. I love the fact that they have the peg hole so you can attach that. That's great. My first big complaint came with this, because I'm sorry, in my opinion, that just looks ridiculous. It's cool in robot mode that it's like a handle at an angle, kind of like a real world gun would be. But for vehicle mode, it just doesn't do anything for me. Now, however, we'll get in more of why I don't like it in robot mode. And again, the only other place you could really plug it in was on the other side, but you still have the angle, or back here, which even looks more ridiculous because you just have like this thing sticking out the back. But one cool thing is, you guys know I love my third-party things. So for him, what I wanted to do, if we kind of take a moment here, and so once we take these combiner, or these third-party weapons that can actually convert, into weapons, I think that looks a little less ridiculous on him, just because it's going straight forward. And if my OCD gets me, I can just go ahead and we can take this other weapon and plug it in, and now we have a armored, race car. Which, for some odd reason, these look more ridiculous than this, in my opinion. Maybe it's because the black helps tie in with this paint scheme. But I kind of like that, I'm not going to lie. But speaking of his color scheme, the other thing that I originally didn't like... unplugged his arm there. This thing does not want to untab. One of the other things that I had an issue with was the original drag strip had 2 wheels on the front. Like this, they were just right here and right here. Now, it's kind of clever what they've done, because you'll see, I'll address it later in robot mode, but for both modes, these are meant to basically just homage where the wheels were originally. That's why they're painted black. Now, if there was a third-party company that could produce some faux wheels that could just plug into that 5mm peg hole to homage that would just be so cool. And but hey, it's nice to dream. Anyway, other than that, this one, compared to the American version, paint app-wise, is very, very bare. Now, the reason I say that is because along here, especially on the sides and up here, you know, they had more red. Well, now you can see, to match the color, the color scheme and the placement of the original cartoon, they just have the stripe right here and right here. Now, again, the kit from Toy Hacks will actually kind of helps fill in some of these areas a little bit better. And I think I'm going to go ahead and apply that, even though it's not as cartoon accurate, just because I feel that Drag Strip, I've come to really like him. You know, initially he was my least favorite, but the more and more I mess with him, the more I like him. And I think that those, once I get those little on there, that'll just help me appreciate this figure a little bit more to kind of help, like I said, break up that yellow. Now, with probably the most interesting figure, because if you guys remember, the original release of Menasor didn't have Wild Rider. Wild Rider is, he's on the same tier, and he's basically just a remold of Dead End, but he's on the same tier as Dead End and Dragstrip as far as where I like him. So they all rank in the number 3 spot. But if I had to pick a favorite out of the number 3s, it would be Wild Rider. Now, Wild Rider is a little bit interesting because the American version was more black and like lots of red. Like this whole area was covered in red. This is a little bit more choppy, and I wish that he had more. I wish he was similar to the American release, if I'm going to be honest. But again, Wild Rider's emblem was also off kilter. It was at an angle, and I hated that. So the fact that they actually have the emblem on there straight is wonderful. And I mean, you know, like with Dead End, I like the vehicle mode, especially with the small little details, you know, like the back windows and the tail lights and everything. And this is for the liberties that they took with these vehicle modes. It's excellent. I love it. Let's go ahead and look at them in robot mode. Okay, everybody. So here we have these guys in their robot modes. So for as much as I loved their vehicle modes, I really like their robot modes, because this is actually where the Takara paint job actually starts to really shine. Now, I know we ended with Wild Rider, but we'll go ahead and start with him this time. Now, I went ahead and gave him the third-party gun, because I think that him and Dead End, it's, you know, it's cool, and I think for Wild Rider it probably matches his personality more to like go to town with somebody with like this pipe baton. But I felt that with the other guys having guns, it just didn't really feel fair. So, you know, I think that this, you know, giving him both actually works pretty well. Now, one thing you might notice for his robot mode is he doesn't have nearly as much red as the American release, which, again, we all know the reason why, but I kind of wish he did. I'm missing more of the red. Now, obviously on his arms, you can see everywhere where he's still got red and everything, especially where it counts in the face. Yeah. And again, I love, well, I don't think I've ever said this, but one thing about Wild Rider was his head mold. I think that's what I really like about it. Plus them like gray eyes that he has. Plus his chest now is a little bit, I love just the small punches of blue with the more of the silver and the Decepticon crest there. His chest is fine, but I really wish he had more of the red like his American release. But overall, he's still a really great figure. And yeah, I'm just actually happy that they included him in the set instead of like Off-Road. I've always liked him more than Off-Road, but you know, that's just my personal opinion. So yeah, I love having Wild Rider like this. Oh, the other thing is with him and Dead End, there is one small complaint that I would have, is the fact that, you know, they tried to paint it here, but if you can see down here on Dead End, they didn't even bother. It's like to try and give them feet, but essentially they ain't got none. They just got legs, no actual foot, which, you know, whatever. I can live with it, but that is something that has truly always bothered me. Alrighty, so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to Drag Strip. Now, one of the things about Drag Strip is, you know, I mentioned this section earlier in vehicle mode. What it homages in robot mode is in the original animation model, and I'm pretty sure it was on the original toy too, the actual two front wheels were actually on his shoulders. Well, as you can see, here's the actual wheels for his vehicle mode. So this, again, is meant to kind of homage, like I said, where those original wheels were. Now, you know, it's nice that they did that. They could have just left it yellow, which would have just... I'm happy for the little bits of breakup that it does have. And I may go ahead and do an update video once I get the repro labels put on him, just to kind of show the differences from where they're at right now. Now, one upgrade that this does have over the American version is the head. The head on this is so much cleaner, so much better done than the American version. I mean, that I have to give it that. And you know what? Overall, for a drag strip, even though this was basically, I think this mold was more meant for Mirage than it was drag strip. But even if that is the case, it's awesome to figure. Now, we'll go ahead and we'll address this. You see, it works kind of as a gun, but if you notice, if you look at the detailing on it, basically nothing about this except the handle itself really shows this to be a gun. It feels like it was an afterthought, because really, I think that it really was, because you can tell it was more meant to be a sword. And I think that they probably just went ahead and added that peg, or that on there, just so they could say, okay, well, you can use it as a gun. Which, I mean, again, it kind of shows in the way it's shaped and everything. Plus, there's no, like we saw, there's no barrel detailing on it. It's just all sword. So, I'll probably dig another third-party handgun out and use it. So here we look at Breakdown. Now, the funny thing about Breakdown is, like I said earlier, he does have the colors from the American version. They've just kind of migrated or kind of swapped places in, you know, with different areas, which I gotta say, I do like it. I'm not gonna lie, I do like the way the color placement is. Now, one particular interesting feature is you look over here and they actually painted both of his hands. Now, the reason that's significant is the hand is molded, is the same, it's basically, you know, it's the same piece as the armor here and the forearm. Now, on a lot of Hasbro figures, I don't think they've ever done it on Hasbro. They don't, if it's molded in the same piece, they generally don't paint the fist. Takara, it's something weird they've kind of done, because like on the Grand Galvatronus set, I believe it was, it was Breakdown. Ironically enough, it was the Breakdown there too. They colored his fist separate from the actual forearm piece. So it adds just a little bit of detail, but I really do like it. I love his weapon. Now see, here's an example of something. You can clearly see the rifle detailing in there, plus the fact where he can use a sword. See, this is done right, this is done wrong. Okay, I'm not gonna hack on it. Plus, again, some of these guys with the red faces, it just looks really cool. Plus, I love the balance of the silvers and blues on his chest and everything. So, and then of course, he's got his Decepticon emblems there on his shoulders now, which looks really cool. So, is it any wonder why he's my second favorite? Alrighty, now, here we come to Dead End. Dead End actually has a couple of features that are borrowed from the other guys we've looked at. Now, on vehicle mode, you can see these were where the doors were. Well, on the original animation model, his tires were actually right here on his shoulders. So again, much like on drag strip, that's why they went ahead and added this little paint on the inside so that it doesn't disrupt his vehicle mode. I'm so sorry, he's probably been out of frame this majority of this time. So, like I was saying, they painted the insides of his shoulders, but they made it to where it wouldn't distract whenever this is actually the door on the vehicle mode. Now, as we mentioned, and also as we mentioned earlier, see, he didn't have the toe tips painted, which I think it would have been nice, but again, I don't know, maybe that having no feet thing bothers me a little bit more. There's nothing really about, I think probably, it's just me, but Dead End comes across as the most generic of the Transformers. I don't know what it is. I mean, just everything from his head sculpt to his chest. I mean, there's nothing that really just stands out about Dead End. The other guys have like some little weird, unique quirk that makes them stand out. but for some reason, I don't know. He's probably, like I said, he's on this, you know what, he may drift to the number 4 spot, to be honest. But, I mean, don't get me wrong, because he's a mold mate with Wild Rider, he's still a great fun figure to have, especially whenever you're looking for the overall set and everything. Alright, now we get to the big boss himself. And I gotta say, one of the things that a lot of people like Vangelis has brought out is the joint, the hip joints and stuff. They allow, there was like some weird clicks on the American version that whenever he was standing, which you can't really see it, you can see his feet were molded to have angles. Well, now when he stands, the joints on this and the hips are so much better that it allows the feet, instead of being like this where they're kind of like weird, and you can see there's a well, if you were a little bit lower, you could see there's a little bit of a gap. With this version, he's actually able to have that wider stance, and it looks good. Now, additionally to his wider stance, this overall figure, go ahead and come back up here. The overall figure, as cool as he was in vehicle mode, he especially nails it in robot mode. Now, apparently the head is a little bit different molding, because instead of his head being in a box like the US version, his head is a box. And I gotta mention this. It's hard to see his eyes because they both look purple on the camera, but they're actually red, and there's tiny bits of red paint. And the first time I transformed him, you know, I was just transforming like normal. Well, what had happened is the paint in his left eye did not adhere when they applied it. So whenever I pop, you know, because his head, go from vehicle mode, you pop it around like this. Well, whenever I did that, the little bit of red paint dropped on my table, and I looked at it. I looked at his eye, and I was like, what is going on? So, you know, it's just a small little accident that nobody could have foreseen. And while I was initially mad, I thought, you know what, it makes, because he does have a tad bit left in there, which kind of gives it like like the iris of an eye, which is really creepy because the rest of that eye is like purple. So it kind of gives him, ironically, kind of like, you know, whenever Mech rebuilt Breakdown and Transformers Prime, how he had like the one eye with like an iris, while the entire other eye was like the solid color. It kind of gives that sort of look, which, hey, makes my Motormaster unique, shall we say. And I mean, he is just, I cannot say enough about how much I love the improved color palette. Now for him, if you wanted to give him a Big O sword, you can give him his Menasor here. See what I did there? Or if you wanted to, you could actually give him his Ionizer sword and give him his blaster. Which, I mean, it looks alien, and if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't be able to tell that was a hilt. At least I wouldn't. So, I mean, it's good enough. Oh, funny thing is, the original version, the US version, was cast in a gray plastic. This was actually cast in a black plastic and painted silver. The other one may actually have been painted silver, but I think it was in a gray plastic, whereas this one, again, ironically enough, you can tell was made from a black one. So when you go ahead and plug in his weapons here, yeah, he's all armored up, ready to go himself. So, but anyway, guys, I'm doing a little bit of an intensive breakdown. I know this video will be a little bit longer, so I appreciate you sticking with me through it. But there is just so much about these figures. That's why I'm going into a more intensive breakdown. But what we're going to do to kind of not make it as long, we're going to go ahead and put him in combiner mode next. We're going to skip the stock mode, because as you saw in the title, there's an upgrade for Menasor. So we'll go ahead and we'll jump straight to combiner mode, and we'll already have the upgrades applied. So give me just a second and we'll show you what that looks like. Alrighty everybody, and here we have Menasor in his combiner mode. And I gotta say, I love the way that he looks as a combiner. Just, I mean, the Stunticons are cool by themselves, but I mean, one of the things that I've always liked is if you look at, like, say, his combiner mode head, if I can get out of the light there. Now the original, this kit that he comes with, we'll address it here in a second, but it actually does come with this head right here, and this homages more of his G1 head with the samurai horns. But I've actually really grown to like the kind of Viking head that he's got going on here. That's really cool. Now, one of the things you'll notice is these little pylons that are on top of his shoulders, and also this little crotch piece. Basically, all this stuff is connected here in the back, and basically it just kind of surrounds Motormaster's torso mode. And that's why he's able to have like such a wider stance and stuff like that. But I do want to go ahead and address why he has these in the first place, because if you watch the Go 90 series or you go back to the original cartoon, Menasor doesn't actually have these pylons on his shoulders. The reason he actually has these things is back in the day, the G1 Motormaster, these were his shoulders, the top of his robot mode shoulders. And so whenever you would transform G1 Motormaster into torso mode, they would sit up high. So once you added the other team members and everything, kind of like this, they would look like basically just pylons on top of the Combiner mode's shoulders. So it's kind of funny that this add-on kit kind of homages that, because I think it was in IDW or something that they also drew him with the shoulder pylons. So it's, I understand it may not be everybody's cup of tea, but I think that it kind of makes him a little bit beefier, especially up here, because just the stock version, it was okay, but I kind of like the little bit of, just a little bit more there to kind of help fill it out. Now, one thing that is different on this guy from his American counterpart is they actually painted this part silver for the Hasbro release, but you can see for the Takara one they don't. But all the box images actually show him with his chest closed, because they didn't include the blackjack with this part of the set. But you can see that this actually is meant to, again, homage the cartoon, because he actually had the Decepticon crest and these little purple stripes on his black chest if you go back and watch the old school cartoon, which I think from straight on, I think it looks good like that too. Or if you want to, you could leave it open. I think that especially with this add-on kit, it just helps fill that out so you can use it either way that you want to. Now, one more thing that I do want to go ahead and mention, it actually does affect his robot mode and his vehicle mode, because what happens is you plug it in where the crotch plate used to plug on, so basically you pop this off and it attaches, and that's from there, that's how it kind of folds back around and attaches to his torso section. And so, you can pop that back off and attach the stock crotch plate if you want to. But for his other two modes, it does add a little bit of bulk and a little bit of just, it kind of looks like something was just kind of, haphazardly slapped on. But, they at least tried to make it kind of work, because it does transform itself to work with robot and vehicle modes. But again, its main focus was to give you this basically right here. So that's just a little bit of forewarning on that, guys. Now, one thing that you might have noticed was on the back, that port right there. You're like, well, what is that for? Well, let's go ahead and we're going to address, well, he does have a gun. That's not his main weapon, is it? Menasor actually has a different weapon. So, as we saw with Motormaster, you could take these two parts and make, the sword or whatever. But when you look at this sword compared to the rest of his overall mass now, it looks kind of something like a short sword. So that's where this wonderful piece kind of comes into play, because say you wanted to give him a blaster that's more, this one for breakdown works, but say you wanted to give him a bigger one that's, maybe more his speed. So you could take this piece right here, you take the other blaster and it plugs in just like that, and now he has a gun that is more combiner sized. But like Billy Mays used to say, but wait, there's more. So you take the sword, you do it like this, kind of get it in there, shove it down, and now he actually has a sword that is also appropriately sized. So one of the reasons I brought out that port on the back was if we flip him around, you notice that it has a peg here on this third party kit. You can actually plug it into Menasor's back, and actually if you wanted to from the front side, let's go ahead and close up your armor there. You can actually see that it looks like he's just got it, strapped to his back, where he could just pull it out at a moment's instance. And I really like that look. I think I'm really digging it. But even, I think even the stock mode is good, but I love just how this all kind of influences him, and how the third-party kit just really, it beefs him up. If that's something that I keep repeating myself on, I apologize. But that's what it mainly really does with the hands and the feet and just everything about it. But just, maybe some final thoughts on this entire set is I'm not upset that they didn't release the Blackjack with this, because Blackjack, for the American release was really cool, but he doesn't scale with any of the other Stunticons. And we've addressed, some of their strengths and stuff like that. I think that definitely the robot mode is one of the areas that they shine in. As far as, just they each have their own kind of little quirk with, like I said before, Dead End's kind of the exception to that, but every one of them is a really great, solid figure. And again, just look at this combiner mode. Do I need to really say more at how awesome he is? So anyway, guys, I know this was a little bit of a longer review, and if you stuck with me all the way through, I really appreciate it. There's really nothing else to say about Menasor. So until next time, guys, about messed up. Actually, I did mess up. So anyway, guys, this has been the review of the Unite Warriors Menasor set. And until next time, guys, we'll see you in another review.